Hi everyone, and welcome back to Inside Archaeology, the channel giving you an inside peek into history's mysteries and the lives of the people who investigate them. Today, I'm very happy to bring you another entry in my Ask an Archaeologist series, where I speak to archaeologists from all over the world about how they ended up in archaeology, their career goals, favorite discoveries, and where they would visit if they had a time machine. Today, my guest is Bruno Soltic, a theologian turned archaeologist from Croatia, but studying for his PhD in the US. He's excavated in Kazakstan, Jordan, and multiple sites in Israel, including Tel Gezer, where he was among the first to reach the late Bronze Age levels associated with the city's destruction by Pharaoh Merneptah of Egypt. Before we begin, don't forget to subscribe or like to help support the channel and tell the algorithm to promote this video to new viewers. Thank you in advance for even taking the time to watch this video for a few minutes. It really helps me out. Without further ado, let's dig into the interview. Welcome to the channel, Bruno. It's a pleasure to have you here.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate it. Thank you for inviting me.
We're going to jump right into our first question, which is, what inspired you to study archaeology, or in your case, to switch from studying theology to studying archaeology?
When I was maybe like a middle school student, I went to this lecture series by one of the archaeologists in Croatia. I grew up in Croatia. I kind of get like infatuated with all these places that he was excavating. He was one of the excavators of in Israel, and then he would show like images of Petra. It was like on those slide Rolodex.
Yeah.
So this was basically the time that I kind of fell in love with it, but then I didn't like pursue it right away. Like I said, you already asked me why did I switch from theology to archaeology. I went to my bachelor's in theology because I grew up in a religious household. It was Protestant religious.
Mm-hmm.
And so I had a big influence of the Bible on my life as I was growing up. And then, but I've never really, I was always like focused on the historical part. I always loved the Old Testament, I loved the stories, the Iron Age period, the King David, or the Judges. So that period was maybe my most interested in. And so I went to theology, and then I talked to one of the girls in my master's class. When I went to my master's, I did my master's in Hebrew Bible, or the Old Testament. And one of the ladies at my program, she's like, "Oh yeah, I know this professor in Texas, in Fort Worth, which is not far from my school. My school was in Abilene, Texas." And she says, "Well, you can contact him." So I went and contacted him, and he's like, "Well, I'm thinking about doing another master's in archaeology because that's what I really want to do." It's like, "Well, why not do a PhD if you already have a master's?" I'm like, "Well, if you think I can do a PhD, then I'll do a PhD," but that's not really, it wasn't really on my radar. So, and that's, I ended up going on a dig, and 10 years later, here I am.
I mean, everyone comes to it in their own way, in their own path. And I actually have worked with one of my professors that was kind of like, she led my digs that I did in Jordan. You've probably heard of her, Dr. Michelle Davio. She was initially, I think, going to seminary school to with an aim to become a nun before she went away and then got a doctorate in archaeology and ended up doing that, fell in love, got married, all that stuff later. So it's not unusual, I think, especially to have a connection between people who are really interested in the Bible and archaeology. There's even, biblical archaeology itself is like an entire field within.
Yeah, I had an interview last year with Dr. Deaver. He also went to a Harvard for a divinity school, and then he had a professor, Ernest Wright, who basically took him to a dig, and he says, "I think archaeology is more for him." And I mean, he's been a key figure in archaeology for the last 40, 50 years. So, yeah, it's kind of not similar story, but yeah, a lot of people kind of dabble in both worlds and then kind of decide with one or the other.
So in that vein, doing a PhD, what's the focus of your research then?
Focus is temples in Iron Age Israel.
Okay.
Or Levant, mostly Levant, because I'm also talking about Jordanian temples and how they relate to the landscape. and also how they relate to the texts, the textual
Hmm.
evidence as well. So I'm kind of exploring both archaeology evidence and also the textual evidence, and how they relate to each other, and also what we have in the landscape, and like what were they buildings built there? Is there like water sources? Because those monumental buildings, the temples should be considered as monumental buildings. They have to have a specific landscape associated with them. I mean, if you
Hmm.
look at ancient Greece, you would have, an Acropolis, you would have the Temple of Athena, or the Temple of Poseidon in the south of Greece. So it's like you have those specific monumental places for monumental temples where they were built. But in
Hmm.
Iron Age Israel, it wasn't the case, because the temples would be much smaller. The only thing that we would have would be monumental, would be the Temple of Solomon, but we have no archaeological evidence for that one.
Following on from that, you're still studying for your PhD, correct? Yeah.
Yes.
So what are your career aspirations for once you finish?
Well, I mean, right now I'm kind of established where I am. I teach as an adjunct at a community college, and I also teach at a school. I teach world history,
Hmm.
and I kind of like this 180 days of work days a year. So I'm basically free half the year.
Hmm.
I still travel to Israel
Hmm.
this summer. I'm planning to go. I've been excavating all around through Asia, and like Jordan a couple of years ago, been to Kazakhstan. Uh, so I'm hoping to excavate as well. I would definitely love to go to Egypt to excavate, and also to Iran. I would like to finish, but it's I've been in my PhD for a very long time, and kind of want to have my kids are a little bit older now. I'm quite established here. I would love to stay where I am teaching. I really enjoy the school very much so. Eventually, I would like to have financial independence,
Mm.
that I would not have to teach anywhere, and that's what I'm kind of working towards.
Yeah.
And I have a lot of different like hobbies that I'm doing. Lately, what I've been doing, I just actually got a not a job, but more like a speaking arrangement with Cunard, which is the premier cruise line,
Yep.
and I've been working with Fred Olson last summer. I'm also going. They invited me back this year as well,
Hmm.
so I'm like doing lecturing at the cruise ships as well.
Yep.
But archaeology, of course, which is my passion, and I'm doing lectures at local clubs here in Florida where I live. I'm actually have a lecture series about ancient Israel, like from beginning, like the Natufian culture, all the way to the modern conflict, like in 48, like
Hmm.
a signature series at the local clubs. I'm happy where I am, what I'm doing, and the only thing, so I think the PhD would just be like a cherry on top,
Top.
or
Yeah.
it's not it doesn't define me as much
Yeah.
anymore as it would when I was in my 30s.
Mm.
But I would definitely want to finish. But so do I see myself teaching as a full-time professor? Yeah, but it's not how do I say,
The
it
end
would,
goal.
yeah, but it would not make a much difference. And
Hmm.
also, like, I just like you, I'm trying to work on my YouTube channel, or kind of presenting in that way. I love making
Hmm.
videos, doing videos for a long time, but I'm kind of taking it more serious in the last 2 years. I'm kind of growing that,
Hmm.
and so that's how I feel myself. I think I want to be a very, very good storyteller of
Hmm.
ancient history.
Yeah. I mean, well, I think that's pretty essential for archaeology and is something that we I wouldn't say that historically are not very good at because, we've been doing it for a long time, but often archaeology gets accused of, being in ivory towers and not accessible and stuff like that. And people like yourself and myself, the ones who are trying to bridge that gap and kind of make archaeology something that's like relatable and accessible for lots of people, I think is going to really be the key going forward. The other follow-on question I have from what you've just said is you mentioned having kids. And I just wanted to ask, it kind of popped up because I have a friend who's also working in archaeology and is a professor, and he has two young children and he digs in Jordan, and he's actually taken them with him a few summers with his wife to do digging. And I was just wondering if you can speak about, or if it's something that you've come across as a challenge, having to balance family life, having kids with archaeology when it's a discipline that often requires you to be away for longer periods of time.
I mean, when I was growing up, we had the war,
Yep.
uh, Yugoslavia fell apart. So we had a war in Croatia. So my dad would have to go. He was a civil protection, so he would have to go for a couple of weeks. So, and when I was kind of growing up, I worked with different people in different industries, and I know some of them like from Philippines or Taiwan, India. They would go away from their families for 9 months to provide for them.
Hmm.
So going for 4 weeks, 5 weeks, I think my kids will survive without
Mm.
me. Plus, I keep in contact with that. I'm planning to bring my dad this year to excavation.
Oh, that's
Um,
fun.
so that'd be good. And then my boys are still young, but I think maybe in 2 3 years I'll hope to bring them to the excavations as well. And like my professor did that, he brought his children to excavation for several
Hmm.
seasons. Actually, he said his son worked in my one of my squares, and I was
Yeah.
supervisor. He's like, well, I had to put my son there to supervise you. So yeah, so I think it's, and also the digs are more like a family
Yeah.
anyway environment. It's not like professional. It is professional, but also it's more family than
Yeah.
anything. So I don't see any issues with that, since we rely a lot on volunteers.
Yeah. I think also, especially nowadays, probably with being able to video chat people back home, that makes it a lot easier than say it
Yeah,
was like even
and
15
also
years ago.
like I have now, I have summers free, so I have
Yeah.
majority of my time. Like if I'm gone for 4 or 5 weeks, I'll have the next 6 7 weeks with them,
Yeah.
like unlimited, which is a lot. But
Hmm.
so also it's not as bad as
Yeah.
it used to be. So when my kids were smaller, they I also would go every other year.
Yeah. Hmm.
So, but now they're a little older, so I can go every year. But before it was every other year as well. So
I'm sure your kids will be looking forward to coming and practicing their Indiana Jonesing on site.
yeah, hope so.
All right, we'll move on to our next kind of like section, which is our kind of short answer bit. What is your best and worst field experiences?
Well, I mean, I don't really have the worst field experience because I just love being there.
Hmm.
But it's only 3 or 4 weeks out of a year. It's not, 24/7. If it would be
Hmm.
24/7, that would be over too much. But
Hmm.
so I don't really have like the worst, but I do have a worst moment
Okay.
at the time. But that it wasn't related really to the dig. It was related to our project. So what happened? We were excavating Kazakhstan, and at the time I had only a Croatian passport, so we had to get our visas in Israel, and we were flying to Kazakhstan. So we got there, and the locals they said, "Oh, we need to go to Kyrgyzstan to see some komparanda. So we need to see like some what we are looking for here. They in Kyrgyzstan they already have it.
Hmm.
So we all went there, and on the way back across the border, and the border is like there's a machine gun here, there's a bridge, there's a machine gun here, and you walk over the bridge. And I got back to the border, and the guy said, "No, you cannot go." I said, "What do you mean you cannot go?" I said, "No, no, 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 no. Your visa was only for one entry." I said, "What do you mean one entry? The visa expires on September 25th, whatever."
Yeah.
It's like, "No, not one entry." I'm like, "That doesn't exist, one entry." It was like, "Yes, it does here." And that was like in Russian, So I kind of dabble in Russian. And my professor like turns to me and he's like, "Here's 20 tingy," which was, I don't know, like $10. I was able to like buy a haircut, dinner for everyone that was there. So anyway, so I ended up going out, and then the local person who was with us there, they knew some American guy who lived in Kyrgyzstan, who lived like 30 minutes from the border. And they called, it was like 10 at night. They called him, and that was the time with like no cell phones and stuff. Like I had cell phone, but it didn't work.
Yeah.
So I was sitting at the border like 11 o'clock at night and waiting for this guy who's gonna come and pick me up. And so I was stuck there for only with a backpack, because we only went for a day trip, and all my stuff was in Kazakhstan. And
Oh,
so I made it back. I found a flight through Russia, and like 3 days later. But I had a pretty good experience there. But like at the moment, it sucked. But the
yeah.
respect, it's a pretty good story. So
Yeah.
and that's it. So
All right.
that was probably the worst experience.
Yeah. And then your best one?
The best one, I mean, I really don't have the best one, but like we found some we found like we came down to late Bronze Age period, and a season year later I couldn't come because my daughter was born, but they found Merneptah's destruction of Gezer, which was kind of confirmed the Merneptah stela, if you're familiar with that. And that was kind of like a major article, a major breakthrough for a project. And that we kind of reached that level first, and I mean that was pretty good. But like every time on excavation is like the best, like the first water break, the first fruit break, the breakfast, like it's just a nice place for me to be. So I really enjoy it.
On that note, what is your favorite thing that you've either found or discovered while you've been on a dig?
So that season, we were excavating in squares, squares we excavate. So I found a ceramic lion's foot, and so I showed it to my supervisor. Look at what I found! And so excited, and he's like, "Well, you need to find the whole lion. I don't need just I need the whole thing." But I think it was a pretty cool find because there was nothing comparable in the area or what we found. So that was pretty cool for me. But I mean, we found like whole vessels from the late Bronze Age period or early Iron Age. But this ceramic was pretty unique piece, so I really enjoyed it.
Did you find the rest of it?
No, unfortunately. I looked hard, but I didn't find anything.
I had a similar experience at Budania, where one year we were finding like a few different pieces of like a limestone statuette. So like what was it? I think they found like a part of a fist in the square next to mine, and then in my square we found like a portion of the torso, kind of like from the neck down to just like the top of the thighs, and then we also found like a little piece of a foot that still had some paint on it and everything. It was really beautiful, but the next year or 2 years after, Dr. Davio sent me back because there was a bulk right between the squares where a lot of it was found. She sent me back. She's like, "You got to find the head to this thing," and I never did.
But usually, in archaeology, everything's in the box.
Yeah,
like, it's a given, and everything you find on the last day.
Yeah,
the last day in the bulk.
Yeah.
That's a given.
If you had a time machine, what era or civilization or site would you go back and visit?
Oh, that's. I mean, I'll be running that thing all the time. But I would say I would love to see Vespasian Rome. So like 70, 80 AD when they opened the Colosseum. I would definitely love to see the first century Jerusalem and the pilgrims. I would also love to see the 70 80s Jerusalem when there was destruction of it. So I think that would be also an event to see. Last summer I went to Carthage and I went to the Punic port. I would love to see the Punic port in all of its shine and glory and how it's operating. And probably the last event I would visit would probably be the fall of Istanbul, or sorry, the fall of Constantinople, and so I would just want to see that.
Yeah.
I would love to meet Alexander the Great in Babylon, but those are just some of the major events I would love to
Yeah.
visit.
And then last question is, what would you say to encourage or inspire other people to follow in your footsteps, like those watching?
Okay, well, I really don't want to sound generic, but you really have to find your passion and you have to kind of build around it, and it doesn't come overnight. Okay. And the key is to be useful to society. So if your passion is useful to society, that's amazing. So you have to have something that other people don't have, and you can offer that to other people, or people either want or what they need. So that is basically the key. So, but having the passion for it, it's golden. Like I love lecturing. I was afraid of public speaking, but I'm not anymore. But you also have to do research to be able to present something new, have different angles for people to give the presentations. And also that's one thing. And the second thing, you have to be very frugal with money if you don't come from money. So you have to be very frugal with your money to have financial freedom. So you have to invest, work, invest, just to have some kind of freedom. And like I have a salary and my teaching job, but I also have like salary during the summer because when I'm
Yeah.
not. So that's like it's good. So I can go on a cruise and give a lecture,
Hmm.
uh, So I think that's very important. But if you do something that you love, like they say, oh, you'll never work in your life. That's not really true because I always want to stay busy. Like I have like 10 different jobs that I do, or not jobs, but like hobbies that I'm involved
Yeah.
with.
Side
Um,
hustles.
yeah. It's like I love football and I referee football and soccer in America. So I do that, and I love editing videos and working on videos, filming videos. So I kind of like I enjoy that. So if you want to be a creator or you want to be a consumer, I'd rather be a creator. So
Hmm.
that's how I see it. But concerning archaeology, I would not recommend anyone to go into archaeology to have a good, financially stable life.
Yeah. The one thing
Uh,
that we wish we could bring from the antiquarian period is just the fact that it was just boatloads of people with boatloads of money just doing it.
yes, and I mean, I was talking about the Renaissance today, and have the Medici family who was basically sponsoring all the arts and all the art projects. And I mean, we have the same thing today. I was at a conference last January, and we talked about the future of archaeology and future, particularly biblical archaeology. And we basically come to the conclusion that you have to have a rich person, rich patron who's going to sponsor
Mm,
the projects because the public is not going to do that, and individuals, archaeologists cannot do that.
mm,
But if you want to have a financially stable life, just to be an archaeologist, it's almost impossible.
hmm.
It's possible, but it's almost impossible. And
Yeah.
but if you want to have a fulfilled life, you want to have good stories, good memories, contribution to society, feeling good about yourself, some good friends, amazing cultural experience. I think archaeology is the number one thing to do in life.
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
that's how I feel.
Very true. I very much agree with you on that. So that's all I have for today. Thank you so much for this. It's been a pleasure to talk to you.
All right. Thank you very much. Thank you for having me. And I hope all the best for you as well. And hopefully one day maybe we'll meet in the field.
Yes, yes, we can collaborate further. I'm always up for it. All right, everyone, that's everything for today. What part of the interview did you like the most? Do you have any questions for Bruno? Don't forget to comment, like this video, and subscribe to the channel before you leave. Also, make sure to go over to Bruno's channel, Digging Deeper with Bruno, and follow him as well to keep up with him and his archaeological journey. Thank you so much for watching. Stay curious, and I hope to see you on my next adventure inside archaeology.